Brilliant. Thank you so much. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've been really excited to do this. And we hope that it will be informative. And as Chelsea said, this is just a really quick overview introduction, and then we're all going to go into breakout rooms where it'll be a much more hopefully interactive session where we can, you can ask questions and all of those kind of things. The workshop that we'll be delivering today is based on lived experience, so I'm doing it alongside my fantastic colleagues Megan and Louise. So we'll be split into three groups, and what we are going to do is we are going to focus in our presentations to suit all, because we've got such a vast amount of different professions in here, which is absolutely fantastic. What we thought would be useful would be to split the breakout rooms into more kind of defined areas. So just have a little think about it as I go through the introduction, and you can choose which breakout room you think suits you the most, basically. Any room that you come to, you will get useful stuff, and it's all, a lot of it is all the same, but we've just targeted it a little bit more to make sure that it's really relevant and that you get the most out of it. So I'm Leanne, before we even start on this. So I'm Leanne. I am a parent to two autistic young people. My youngest is 13 and has a PDA profile. We've had lots and lots of different experiences over the years, and I've learned and I've failed and I've learned again, and that's what sort of brought us here today to be able to deliver this workshop to you. So what is PDA? I think is a bit of a difficult question, really, because it's hard to answer what it is, because it is such a complex thing. But what we've done is we've used the PDA Society's definition of it, and they describe it to be as widely understood to be a profile of autism. Often people ask, is PDA a separate thing? Is it separate to autism? Can you be autistic and, or can you not be autistic and have a PDA profile? As it currently stands, a PDA profile would be identified, generally speaking, alongside an autism diagnosis. So you can't just have PDA without autism alongside it. So I think that's one of the key questions that a lot of people ask. One of the key features of PDA is demand avoidance. And I think what makes it different, we all experience demand avoidance. Everybody experiences demand avoidance in everyday life. This demand avoidance is very different, and it's internal demands. So it's things like eating, drinking, going to the toilet. Any demand on a person has a massive impact, and it is very much anxiety driven. So it's not your general, well, I just don't want to do that. This is something that is an innate in that person that just makes it debilitating and unable to be able to manage those demands. And I think what's the real critical thing, and what I always notice with my daughter, is that it's the things that she wants to do. She desperately wants to do things, but because of the demands on her, she just can't do it. And I think that, for me, really, highlights the difference between somebody who just doesn't want to do something and what we're talking about here with pathological demand avoidance, which I should have said rather than just PDA, which is the shorten for it. So with PDA, what is often quite misunderstood is around what kind of approaches and what kind of things you would do to support a PDAer, as they're sort of known as, because traditional autism approaches generally don't work, and actually can have a real negative or damaging impact on children, young people, and adults if they are, if that is continually sort of put onto them. And I think that's what is really confusing, because actually it is part of autism, but actually it's so significantly different to those regular approaches that you would try. So the PDA Society has come up with 3 key areas that they feel are the foundations really build on, to be able to get that right support and those approaches. And if you can get all these three right, you are in a much, much stronger position to be able to support that person most effectively. So the first one is trust. Trust in relationships. Relationships are absolutely critical. And we're going to talk a lot more about this in the breakout rooms. But having a trusted relationship is the difference between somebody being able to do something or not. For my daughter, not having a trusted relationship, it makes her feel safe, it makes her feel understood. Those relationships have to be genuine. If there's anything that is in there that isn't genuine, they will sniff it out straight away, and that trust will never build. But it is absolutely critical, and to get the foundations of that, you are well on your way to be able to really support. And actually, what I always say as well is, building relationships, it doesn't cost anything. It's something that everybody can do, but it takes that time and that real want to be able to do it. And then equity. So again, this is something in particularly with school-age children that's a real struggle. And I think particularly because of how the school system and education is, the social norms is for children to do as they're told, and that is what the expectation is. For PDAers, actually, they don't see things like that. They see things as equal, and actually that can cause real challenges when you're in a school situation where you've got sort of the sort of hierarchy of the teacher and then the children. And that is not to say that these children don't have respect, because they do. They have a lot of respect. They respect a lot of things, but they respect more if they are respected on that level playing field. And it does make such a difference. And it doesn't mean that they can just go and do what they want or anything like that. That's not what this is about. But it's about understanding that that's how they see it on a level, on a balance. Because it allows them to have their autonomy, and without that, it can be quite frightening for them. So, equity is really critical. And compassion. And I always just think, compassion is just so important. Understanding distress behaviours or panic attacks, that is really important. They are feeling out of control and they're so distressed that they just can't cope. For a lot of PDAers, thinking kindly about themselves is really difficult. So there's a lot of negative talk within them. And it's our responsibility to enable them to start to feel more positive about themselves. And by having that compassion, it just really helps. So the PDA Society came up with this acronym of PANDA, and I always think this is really useful way of thinking of it, because it's not a checklist. It's not something that you tick off and do each one after the other. But what it does do is it gives you a kind of visual and a thing to think about of all the different elements that you could potentially try to support a child, young person, adult, whoever that might be, with a PDA profile. And so, prioritize and compromise. Pick your battles, I think, is one of the critical things. Work out what's important and compromise. And I think for adults, sometimes that's really difficult, particularly when you're working with a child. But actually, by compromising and working out what's really essential. So is it a health and safety risk to that child? Or is it you just want them to sit at the table? What is important, and making those compromises makes a huge difference. Managing their anxiety. By doing all of these things, you will be managing their anxiety. Negotiation. My daughter is she could work for the SAS as a negotiator. I mean, she's fantastic. And she doesn't do it as a kind of, a lot of people will say sometimes that they become manipulative. It's not a manipulation. It is that negotiation, so that she retains her autonomy. And we negotiate as a family all the time, and it works. But it has to be collaborative as well. Disguising and managing demands, we're going to talk about that a lot more in the breakout rooms, but there are ways of doing that, and using declarative language and all of these kind of things can make a huge difference. And adaptation, just change things. It doesn't necessarily have to be everything is often in a kind of box. It doesn't always have to be in that box, so always think outside it. Just quickly, I mean, this is something that you can all look up outside of this, but the PDA Society ran a survey in 2023, and they had 921 responses. And I just wanted to highlight to you that one of the areas that that they found, because I think the statistics of it are quite shocking, really, when you think about what life is like for these parents and for these children. And I think, 99% need to be in control. And I actually really don't like the word be in control, because I think it has such negative connotations. I prefer autonomy, because I think that is less, a lot of people say, well, she's so controlling, and they see that as a real negative. But actually, if they need autonomy, you can find ways around that. But 98% have sensory differences, 70% experience isolation and loneliness, which again, we will go into in more detail. But it just really highlights the challenges that these children are facing day in and day out, and the importance of you all being here today to understand it more and find a way forward. And then just before I finish my introduction, I just wanted to touch on parental blame. And I think this is something that I've experienced. I know, others experience all the time. And I think because PDA is still quite new to being understood, and it is quite an extreme difference in how you have to parent children. There is a lot of parental blame, and so a research project was taken out in 2023, and it was looking at the parental blame and whether it was as big as what the researchers thought it was. And what they found out that 87.8% of parents had felt blamed for some aspect of their autistic child's presentation or lack of progress. 52% of parents said that professionals had raised concerns about their own mental health. And again, this is something we hear all the time. We'll go into it in the workshops, but it's you need to go to the doctor, or you must be depressed, you must be this. And actually, as a parent, when you've got everything on top of you, that can be the worst thing you can possibly hear, and it just feels like it's all your fault. And I think what was really shocking was 10.93% have been subjected to formal safeguarding procedures, which cited the parent carers as being at fault for their child or young person's presentation. And of those, 76.75 were neurodivergent themselves, which I think, a lot of these parents, carers are, they may be autistic, they may have ADHD, they may have PDA. There's all of those different elements that come into it, but that doesn't mean that they're to blame for what is happening for their family at that time. So that brings me to the end of our introduction. I hope that was helpful. And these are the, oh, sorry, Chelsea, is there, go on, sorry.
I just wanted to ask, there's a question that's just come into the chat.
Of course.
Is PDA, is there a spectrum of PDA?
Now that's a really interesting question, and it is something that's asked all along. There isn't. What I would say is PDA is very dependent on the situation that the child or young person is in. So, for example, if a child was having all of these trusted relationships, we're having low demands, were all of the things that we've just discussed, it is highly likely that their presentation will be less than of a child who has got all of the demands on them, hasn't got the trusted relationships and all of those kind of things. So, for example, my daughter, if she is in a heightened state, so she's got loads of demands on her and everything, her demand avoidance peaks. It absolutely goes through the roof. However, when she is calm and at home and everything is low demand and all of those kind of things, she's able to deal with them more. So I think it's very dependent on the support that they are getting at that time and how they are feeling, within themselves, rather than it being a kind of spectrum. It's very much around what that situation looks like at that time for that individual child. Does that, hopefully that helps.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much.